Although their friends were on a trip of Christmas, they still needed to check up on him, make sure he was fine. Taehyung's phone must have been broken due to that happened at Taehyung's wedding. But he was thankful for that. He knew Invo's number by heart. They slip his coffee and press his lips together. Your mother is probably in the garden, and I guess uncle is in the study. Ines said, and they nodded and placed the cup of the coffee on the countertop. Thank you for the coffee. I'll eat later. I just need to talk to Dad. They smiled at her. Of course, the girl nodded. Watching their walk and past her, they ascended the stair in search of his father in order to properly apologize and tell him that he missed him, that he was alright and he didn't need to worry. They gently knocked on the door of the study and then opened the door slowly. Like always, they stepped inside and found the study was empty. But the laptop on the desk was open and the paper was shattered over, and he decided to wait and think he must come back in few minutes. They hummed a tone under his breath and raised the edge of the table, capsing at the pen and all the stuff that he found pouring. There were contact file, ink pen, an empty cup of coffee, his father's black ring on the side of the pen holder. He had always wore that ring and they rounded the table and picked up the ring before slipping it on his finger. It was so huge, but they fixed the hand and admired that beautiful stone. Signing, they looked around the room and sat on the chair, wiggled it sideways, and he waited. They fumbled around with the laptop, checking the files, and then opened the drawer. It was already been 15 minutes. Where was his father? They opened the last drawer, waiting to find something interesting, and find he did. The bind of the folder with thick black leather, and that was a gold tape behind the corners. They picked it up, hummed the tune of Barbie Boy, and placed it on the table. When he opened it, he smiled that it was a photo album, but the photos were mostly of his mother. They giggled when he found the picture of Yamin on her prom day wearing a royal blue gown and acting like a girl, with her tongue stuck out. Why had he never seen this picture before? They flinched to papers. All of them were containing their mother picture. They turned another page and then another until he stopped. And the picture. There was a man beside his mother with his arm wrapped around her shoulder. They swallowed as his hand trembling upon realizing his face almost instantly. So, what if their picture of Alex there? He was Yamin's ex-husband after all. The next picture had gripping the album tightly. They bit his lips and stared at the picture of the grey-eyed man, and he sat beside her mother in the park with the small kid on his lap. The little boy had grey eyes, and he laughed while holding a stuffed toy in his hand. He only had two teeth that he grinned. He shook his head, blinking his eyes to give the right off. His eyes flinched to another page, and the album fell from his hand on the floor with a thud. It was Taehyung, and he was sitting on his father's shoulder. Father, a cry left him out as he left lightheaded. They slipped down the chair and nodded, kidding. When his knees ached due to force, they fumbled with the album and went through the picture, all of them having their little version of Taehyung. With his man, with their trembling hands, he ripped out a photo from the album and stared at it closely, looking for the sign of Photoshop or any editor by used. They found none. It didn't look fake. When he was hugging Taehyung, while a doodle version of Tae was in his arm, with his head on the shoulder, it didn't look fake. When he had a huge smile on his face, he stood with little Taehyung, with ice cream on both of their faces. It didn't look fake. When he found his own picture, sleeping in a crab while holding his hand, they let out a frustrated cry. His voice was shaking as his whole body was trembling with fear and anxiety. They stood up and kicked the album. Why? They didn't want to believe them, wanted to wake up for the nightmare, but he knew it was the reality. They sat down on the floor and cried silently. He cried for what he was going to lose. And for what he had never. They never belonged here. He had no one here. Oh God, they needed to get out of here. These people, they lied to him their whole lives and he didn't want to face anyone. When the truth came out, they couldn't face the man he had called father for 20 years. He couldn't face the man he had come to love. He just couldn't see the disappointment and anger in his eyes. He had been betrayed. Jungkook had been betrayed. They stood up on his shaky leg and wiped their cheeks, even though more tears were kept coming. They shrugged with the cold because he was only wearing a thin shirt and collected the album in his hand. His legs shook and he couldn't just stand for long. His hand was going cold and he sensed the panic come up. They closed the drawer, picked up the ring that had fallen from his finger and placed it on the desk and made a dash of their door. They closed the door behind and ran toward the other side of the hall. They wanted to get out of this place. It was suffocating him. They clenched the album against his chest and then ran. And he saw the door he was looking for. They didn't bother to knock and opened the door with a bang. It slammed with the wall opposite to it, making the person on the bed were startled as he jumped and looked on the door in panic. He angrily hissed but stopped, grabbing a t-shirt for his side. He threw it over his head and removed the cover for his body. What happened? Why are you running in the house like it's on fire? He snapped, rubbing his hand over his face, tears running down his cheeks, and he wiped them continuously, walking toward the bed on which he sat. They choked on his sob as he thrust his hand for him to take the folder. Daehyung obviously noticing that something was terrible wrong, and he looked at Dae with wide eyes. Dae, what's wrong? He sat up straight and looked at Dae's tear-stained face before looking at the folder in his hand. Dae, he asked in alarm. Dae was crying, river freaking that heck out of him. Daehyung pushed the hair away from his forehead and swung his leg over the bed. I found it. He was so right, they sobbed, making him panic even more. Daehyung was about to stand up to calm Dae down, knowing this boy had habit to overreacting to small things. And the gaps and the folder fell off his hand. The emotion and feelings come in full force. The insecurity of the past, the betrayal of his own mother, the lack of their real father, the betrayal toward the man he loved. They couldn't take it anymore. He seems to be walking in slow motion, and his voice was echoed around the hall. Taehyung fell down on his knees. They stumbled backward and heard a small thud, that hot sensation at the back of his head. They closed his eyes, and it didn't even take him a minute to fall into that darkness. Ahead, with the thick and slow motion, voice of Taehyung screamed his name. Taehyung yelled at the top of his lungs, stepping over the album to catch Dae. It was a second too late. He glared around the room, and then at Dae, his eyes moved to the remaining closed